Welcome back to the Skunkworks. Before we get into the spreadsheet and the code, I just want to say thank you to the people who responded to this poll that I put out this week. And it was about videos or live streams. Now, I had the idea that live streams must be better. People must love live streams, but most people in the poll are saying that they prefer videos. So thank you for participating. That's really interesting for me. I'm trying to do one video and one post on the community page at the moment. You can see on the community page, we've got other things. We've got GIFs and little screenshots. Try to do one video, one post every week. Any interaction there, I really appreciate. So if you give the videos a thumbs up, a few comments on the post, that really helps me. So thank you so much. And with that said, let's get into the Skunkworks now. Before you go, please give the Skunkworks a chance. This video series is what coding is really like. Those 5-minute videos, 10-minute videos, they're good to watch, easy to digest. But in this series, we get into the dust, the blood, sweat and tears, the real hard work of computer programming. You can see the decision-making processes. You can see the debugging. So please give it a try. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and please share it. I want to get more people watching this series. So this is as far as we've got so far. Download files available from the website, link below this video. And we're on video 9 now. What have we got? We've got a chessboard, we've got some pieces, and we've got 2 sheets in the file. Now, in the previous video, we were starting to look at possible moves. And you can see in this area, we've got some possible moves here. And what we're looking to do in this video is really make those more accurate. At the moment, we're just looking at all squares on the board. We want to say things like, okay, if we click on a rook, what are the possible rook moves? Not all of the squares on the board. The rook can move in straight lines. The bishop, and we're going to look at the bishop, can move in diagonals. So the first question is, how do we communicate that conceptually or logically to VBA? If the logic is clear, we can then do the coding. Well, if we're talking about the bishop, then what would the logic be for those diagonal squares that the bishop can move to? Well, these diagonal squares, they are the same number of rows away as columns from the square where the bishop is, if that makes sense. So this square here, which is cell J3, that's three rows up and 3 columns across. So if the number of rows and the number of columns is the same, that means we want to be able to move to that square. So that's the kind of logic we're going to try to translate into VBA and start really picking out these moves more accurately. So let's get into the VBA editor here. This is the code from the last video. Go back to the last video if you want to understand this code. I know we're going to have to put some code in around here because this is the code that inputs the information to the engine sheet. So if we have a move, this is the line of code. This is the line of code rather that's going to input the cell reference to the engine sheet. So I want to put a line of code here to put another condition here to say if this move is possible in terms of the position, is it on a diagonal, for example, then we want to do something. We're going to do that using a conditional statement. What is our logic going to be? So we're saying if the number of columns away is the same as the number of rows away, then this cell is on a diagonal. So what in the code, what do we have that might help us here? You might want to stop the video, try to do it yourself. Well, we've got 2 variables here, and we're using a loop within a loop. One variable is counting the rows. The other variable is counting the columns. So let's say if one variable equals the other variable, then this cell is on a diagonal. So we can say if row count equals col count, then, and then when we close a conditional statement, when we open a conditional statement, it's a good idea to close it at the same time so we don't get confused later. And what is this conditional statement doing? Well, the conditional statement is saying if on a diagonal, there we go, if on a diagonal, and then I'm going to copy paste the annotation down to the bottom and just say end if on a diagonal. There we go. The way I see this working is this piece of code is going to pick out diagonal squares. We're going to have another piece of code to pick out squares that are on a line. another piece of code to pick out squares that the knight can move to. Later on, we're going to have a mechanism that switches on each of these little conditional statements depending on the capabilities of the piece. That's how I see it all working. We're going to get to that later on. Okay, so how are we going here? So if row count equals col counts, then, now there's one more piece of information here. We're going to put abs in here, abs. So we want the absolute value of these variables. For example, if the column, if the value of the row variable is -2 and the value of the col variable is 2, then the values won't be the same. So we're interested in the absolute values because we would want to include that particular reference in the diagonal. You'll see how it's working in a minute. Okay, so this seems to make sense. If the absolute value of the row variable is the same as the absolute value of the col variable, then we do want to include this move in. Now, there's one thing that I think we really should have done last time, which is clearing this area here that contains all of the moves. So yeah, can't delay this any longer. We're going to have to put this code in. For now, let's just put a static reference here. Maybe later on we'll make it dynamic. For the time being, we'll just use a static reference. So G4 is the first cell we want to clear. Just going to physically write that down. G4, and then how far do we want to go down? So going down to row 35. Let's get the whole desktop view here. Yeah, we're going down to row 35, down at the bottom here. And then we want to go to, I think it's column BR. Yeah, I can see it's column BR. So G4 to BR35. That's the area we want to clear. Because remember, before we start this moves analysis, we want to clear out previous moves. That's going to avoid confusion. Where are we going to put this code? Let's just realign the windows here. Where are we going to put this code? Well, we're going to put this code, that's the VBA editor rather, here we are. We're going to put this code in a separate routine. Now, this is an example of modulation. You could say separating out routines so that you can call them, because it might not be that you could say just put the code here at the top of the macro, but maybe we wouldn't want to run that code sometimes when running that macro. And maybe other routines might want to reference this macro, might want to call this macro. So let's separate it out. And let's say sub clear moves area. There we go. And then we need our reference. So it's going to be, remember, we might not be on the engine sheet. So we've got to be explicit, include the sheet name here. So sheets engine dot range, and it's going to be G4 to BR35. Now I want to test this first, so I'm just going to select this range. Okay, go to the engine sheet, come back to this routine, F5 to run the code. Now we should have the area selected, and I can see outside of your screenshot, I can see that the correct area is selected. So just a quick test that I often do when I'm using clear code, selecting the range first, doing a quick test. That helps us to establish if it's accurate or not. We're going to just do clear contents here. That means we'll retain the formats, and in the future that will be desirable. Okay, so I'm just going to hit the F5 key now, and there we go. The values have disappeared. Just going to do a quick introduction. We've got the new dog now. So Luna, come on, up. But she's quite tired at the moment. She's just kind of standing, she's lying on the floor here, so I can't quite introduce her to you. Anyway, maybe later on we'll introduce the dog. You might see her coming in and out down here. Anyway, back to the code. So we've got this clear code. Clear code seems to be working well. We want to now call this routine at the top of the position moves routine to make sure we clear that moves area, avoid any possible confusion. I'm going to say call and then the name of the macro. So Excel hitting the F8 key now. I can see Excel is going to go to the other macro, and then it seems to be running fine. Okay, so we've done that essential step. So we're clearing the code there. Now what's next? We've got our code in the routine to identify the diagonal cells. So what are we expecting to happen? Well, we're expecting to run the routine. Remember, this routine depends on the piece that that triggers the routine. Each of the pieces, each of these shapes triggers the same routine, of course, and then we take the piece name. Well, later we're going to take the piece name, but here we're taking the cell reference of the piece, putting that into the routine to do the positioning. Anyway, enough talk. Let's just give it a try. Save the file. And then we're working on bishops, of course, diagonal moves. So just hit bishop, the code is run. Nice and fast, efficient code. VBA editor looks fine. Now I can see on the engine sheet, we have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So just outside your screenshot here over on the right, yeah, we've got 7 references here. So it's saying there's 7 possible moves in chess language. Well, does that make sense to us? What have we got here? Well, this, remember at the moment, we're ignoring other pieces. Of course, in a game of chess, the bishop will be blocked by the pawn here, wouldn't have any possible moves. Later on, that's one of the things we're going to have to work through. Going to be lots of things to work through later. How many cells are there? Assuming no other pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I think there's 7 cells there. So let's see what we got to there. Did we get 7? Did we get 8? Okay, we've actually got 8 cells here. So what's happened there? I think, can you guess what's happened? You might want to stop the video, see if you can debug it yourself. We're expecting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 possible moves here. They're the diagonal squares that are within the board range. That's what we're expecting. But it hasn't given us 7, it's given us 8. So why is it giving us 8? I think it's also given us the cell that the piece is in. That's not really a possible move because it's the same cell. It's not a possible move. So we actually want to discount that. So H10, cell H10, is that referenced? Yeah, we've got cell H10 is referenced here. So in the code, we want to eliminate that if we can. How might we eliminate that? Well, the address that the piece is in gets a bit confusing with the Excel references and the chess references. Anyway, we are storing the current location, the cell reference in this current square variable. So could we use that information to ignore the cell that the piece is actually in? I think we could do here. Okay, because here we've got a line of code that's excluding cells that are outside this code here. This code is excluding cells that are outside the board area. We've got a helpful annotation. Oh, they're useful, those annotations. Helpful annotation to remind us. Why don't we put an additional? I'm just looking at the consistency of the indentation here. I just want to make this as consistent as I can. Okay, that looks better. Why don't we put an additional one here to say if the range you're looking at, remember we're looping through all of the cells, if the cell contains the current piece, just ignore it. So let's say, okay, where would we put this in there? Okay, hopefully you've worked this out yourself, how to do this. Okay, let's do it like this. Range. Well, actually, if we're looking at the current square, because remember, we're offsetting from the current square. So if we're looking at the current square, then row count must equal 0. Are we offsetting though? Are we actually offsetting? I think we are. Offset. We're offsetting from the current square. So if we say, well, let's just try it. Range currents, if row count equals 0 and col count, col count equals 0, then exclude cell equals true. Yeah, because remember, we're offsetting away from the current address. So if both of the offsets are set to 0, we're going to stay in the same place. We want to avoid that. Yeah, And if that's happening, row count it will equal 0 and column count will equal 0. My dog has fallen asleep at my feet here, snoring a little bit. Hopefully she'll wake up later and you can say hello to her. Right, enough dog stuff. Let's run this code. So I'm going to click on the bishop again. Okay, nice efficient code. The code has run and we can see good news. We can see we only have 7 references here rather than 8 references. So we've managed to eliminate the cell that contains the piece. Okay, so as you can see, just steady, systematic, building in these rules one by one. We've built in 2 rules there, we could say. We've established that diagonal movement and we've eliminated references to the cell that the piece is currently in. So what else might we want to do at this point? Okay, well, one nice thing to do would be to highlight the cells that the piece could possibly move to. How about we do that? Let's look at the code. Think, where would we put this into the code? Okay, so this area here, this is where we're inputting the information onto the engine sheet, the cell address, that is a possible move. So let's take this. This is the line of code that gives us the cell that the routine is currently looking at. Let's say dot borders. Let's just try to give it a red border. So let's say dot borders dot color. I think this is going to work equals VB red. Okay, so this should just give us a red outline. And again, let's put an annotation in here. Highlight cell on board. Board if on a diagonal and if on a diagonal. Highlight the cell on the board. Seems to make sense. Okay. Okay. Let's give this a go. Click on the bishop again. Okay, just clicked on the bishop. Okay, what's happened here then? Right, so we do have some red here, but we haven't got red on all the borders. Okay. So I would expect, let's see what's happened here. Dot borders, dot color equals VB red. Okay, I think it's to do with this code for formatting borders. So clearly it's not quite sufficient. Okay. So if that's the case, dot borders, dot color. Borders dot color. Okay, I want all of the borders to be highlighted red, of course. So it hasn't quite worked that. Okay, let's just try recording this code. I'm going to go to the developer tab, record macro. I'm going to color border. I'm going to record this coloring code myself. That's going to give me a better understanding of how to write this code and what I need and don't need. So I'm just going to select, let's just select this cell, Alt-H-O-E, keyboard shortcut, and let's give the borders red outline. There we go. Okay, now we've got to remember to stop the macro recorder, developer tab, stop recording. Now when we go to the VBA editor, we're expecting to see, we can see we've got a new module here. Excel often creates a new module, usually creates a new module when we activate the macro recorder. We can see here, I knew this would be a nightmare. So, okay. Now I don't really want to drop all that code into the, don't really want to drop all that code into the routine. So could I do it with a separate routine? Then I'd have to use a module level variable, of course. Okay, must be an easier way to do this. Should have borders Excel top. Select, we want to select all borders. Excel 9. Okay, perhaps we'll use this code for now. And then with selection dots, it's just a lot of code. It really is a lot of code. Okay, rather than doing this, then I'm wondering if we could copy paste. We could set up a cell somewhere and then copy paste the formats. I think that's a better idea. So rather than getting involved in this code, let me know in the comments, by the way, if there's some easy border code, or let me know what I've missed, and let me know in the comments. But often a better approach, an approach I would usually recommend, would be to use a cell. Let's put myself on the other side of the screen here. Use a cell and then store the formats in a cell, set the formats exactly how you want them, and then just copy paste the formats from that cell. A little more code intensive, not as efficient, but it gives us very precise control over the formatting of the cell. So let's just say, use this cell here, Alt-H-O-E. I'm going to have an outline. Let's just have a thick red outline. Let's have no fill in the middle. Didn't quite get the red there. Try this again. Thick line, and color red. Okay, let's just go outline. Okay, this is what we want. Okay, yeah. So this is possible move. See, that outline might be a bit aggressive. It might be a bit thick, that outline. But if it is, we can just come back to this cell and fix it. Okay. Now I've named the other cells. I'm going to name this cell 2. Now one thing I have noticed is we've got a few named ranges now. So I want to distinguish between where the named ranges are. Now usually when I use named ranges, I use this naming convention. I put E underscore at the beginning. That's because we're on the engine sheet. That just tells me quickly where the named range is. So if something was on the board sheet, you'll start it with B underscore. So I'm going to say E underscore, and then let's say POS format. There we go, because the role of the cell is to put possible move formatting in. Possible move there. Okay, so we want to copy this cell in the code, and the name of the cell is EPOS format. So we don't need any of this terrible code now, but I'm just going to delete this. No, we don't want to export it. So right click on the module and remove. And then this line of code we don't need here. I'm going to copy the cell. Sheets. Let's see what happens. This is the name of the cell. Copy. Then we want to paste it in. Okay, I don't need that first line of code. We want to say paste special. Excel formats. I think this is sufficient. Okay, so copy the cell there. So copy, format store, and then here paste to cell. Okay. Now clearly this is going to involve some reformatting. We're going to have to reformat the board to get rid of those possible move formatted squares. But we do have some code here somewhere that should format the board for us. Let's have a look. We've got format board here. Hopefully that just formats the board. There we go. So we should be able to call this routine to format the board when we wish to do that. Okay, so let's see what happens. Clicking the piece again. Yeah, and we can see the possible moves are highlighted there. That's pretty cool. So we need something now. It would be quite nice now if we could just click on the piece again and the board would reformat. So effectively it would switch off those possible moves. Wonder if we can do that. I wonder if it's too much in this video. A couple of things we forgot to do. forgot to exit cut copy mode. I'm in module B here. Cut copy mode equals false. So you can see before we had the marching ants there. Just show you quickly what I mean. Here we go. So if we go to the engine sheet now, you'll see, oh, we can't see it now, okay. Okay, but anyway, we want to exit cut copy mode, which means we won't have the marching ants around any cells that show that when a cell's being copied. We get that flashing border effect. We want to avoid that. We can avoid that by doing application.cut copy mode equals false. Let's say out of copy mode, where it's fairly evident from the line of code. Okay, there we go, that's a better view. Let's try it one more time. So it's hitting bishop here. There we go. Now, if I hit format board, I'm wondering if it's going to format the board nicely for us. This is the previous routine we had, of course. So I've just saved the file, Control S, format board, got some flashing there. Still flashing, still flashing. Okay, and we're still going here. There we go. Okay, and it has formatted the board, but it took quite a while to do that. I'm just wondering if we can go to this format board code and just try to make it more efficient, for example, by switching off screen updating. Let's try that. There we go. And at the end of the routine, go remember to switch it back on. I wonder the extent to which that will speed things up. Try formatting the board again. Much smoother, so we avoid the screen flashing, and that's quite a lot faster already. It's not super efficient, but it's fast enough, I think. That might be something we have to revisit later. So now if I hit bishop and see the possible moves being highlighted, let's do the same thing. Let's switch off screen updating for our moves routine here. False, there we go. And then the same line of code at the end of the routine. We're setting this true here. There we go. Does that speed things up? And that speeds things up quite considerably. So just switching off that screen updating, you can speed things up. I'm not sure if that's smooth enough for us to, for it to be playable. I don't know if that's acceptable, how smooth it is. If it's not, we might have to revisit this approach later and avoid this copy pasting of the formats, that mechanism that I suggested. We might have to avoid that later. Okay, so there's one more thing I'd like to do. Now I'd like to be able to click the bishop and then the board would reformat that. That's the final thing I'd like to do. How complicated is it? Well, okay. We've got this possible moves routine here. Now, if you click on one of the pieces, right click, assign macro, you'll see that it has this possible moves routine assigned to it. So whenever we click on one of these pieces, we're going to get this possible moves routine running. That's not what we want now, because we want to be able to click on a piece, and if the possible moves are showing, then we want to just reformat the board, effectively removing those possible moves. So we'll have the effect of clicking on the piece, possible moves are shown, clicking on the piece again, possible moves are gone, we just go back to a normal board. That would be pretty cool. I think there's different ways we could do that. And let's say, because we need to have an idea of mode here, an idea of mode. Now, if we're in, oh, that's come back. Hello, Luna. You can just see Luna in the bottom left corner here. Maybe we'll go to a whole camera for a little bit, just to see her. And Luna, sit. There she is in the bottom left-hand corner. We can't quite see her. You can see her a bit on that view. There you go, darling. Okay. So yeah, we need a sense of mode, because we need to say to Excel, okay, if moves are not showing, then we want to do this, or if moves are currently showing, then we want to do that. This is the idea. So let's put this, let's store the mode here. We're on the engine sheet, that's the supporting sheet. So we're just going to store the mode here. Now let's say moves, and then we'll have another mode name there. So when moves are showing at the end of the routine, we want to input moves here to show that we're in moves mode, to show that moves are showing. In fact, there's a better way to do this. Let's say moves mode here, and let's say okay, even easier. Let's just say moves visible, question mark, and then let's say no, because in normal operation, just looking at the board, the moves are not visible. And we want to change this to yes, change this value to yes when the moves are made visible. Okay. Now I'm a bit wary of using another named range here, so we're using quite a few named ranges. I will use one more. Okay, in fact, I won't use a named range here. I'm just going to offset from the previous named range. Okay, so let's put it into the code first. So we've got possible moves here. Now we want something else to show here, which is, okay, if some possible moves have been found. So if, and this variable, number ref variable, this is the number of references that it finds, and this starts as 1. Okay, so if number ref minus 1 equals 0, then no moves have been found. So if this does not equal 0, then we want to change the mode because moves must be showing. Okay. So I'm going to say that, make a note here, if some moves have been found. There we go, and then same procedure here. I'm going to copy the annotation down and just say and if some moves have been found. Now we want to do a few things. If some moves have been found, well, we certainly want to do one thing. We want to change this mode here. Change the mode, and I'm going to offset from this previous cell. Okay, sheets, engine. E+ format it is. And let's just switch over to the left here. Plus formats. Dot offset, and then we're 1 row below, so offset 1 0 equals yes. So that means moves are visible. Okay. And then somewhere we're going to have to reset that yes to no to show that moves are not visible. Okay. So now when I hit the bishop here, I'm expecting, yeah, this has been set to yes. Switch over to the other side of the screen here. The cell has been set to yes, and then just to prove that again, switch that back to no, just with a little cell edit there, and hit the bishop again, and we can see, yeah, so it's saying moves are currently visible. Okay. So now we need a routine to click, when we click the pieces, then we need a routine, we need some code to just reformat the board. Okay. Now I was going to do this with a separate routine, but maybe we can do it in the same routine here. So if, yeah, and let's just say, before we do anything, let's say if, we use the cell reference down here. Okay. Here we go, if, yes. So if moves are currently showing, okay, if showing, and we want to do something, same procedure here, copy paste down the annotation. So if moves, and if moves are showing. So if moves are currently showing, then we don't want to do any moves processing. We just want to reformat the board. Now, we have a piece of code to reformat the board, which is in the A setup board module, and it's called color board remote. So we want to call this routine. Just going to copy paste the title of the routine. We want to call the routine here, call color board remote. So that's going to change colors, reset the colors rather, reformat the board, and then we just want to leave the routine. Okay, there's one more thing we want to do. We want to reset the mode here to move showing being no. Okay, so let's recycle some code of views down here. And then we've got the sense of mode coming in. Okay, so this should complete the mechanism that we're looking for here. I'm just going to have a quick sense check. So we've got the conditional statement. Going to reset it. This is going to recolor the board, and remove possible move formats, exit sub, and if move show. Okay. So this is going to, the first thing the routine does is going to check if we're in move visible mode. If we are, then it's just going to reformat the board and then exit the routine. So we won't do anything. Anyway, as always, I'll shut up. I do way too much talking in these videos. I'll shut up and let's see what happens now. Okay, that was the little format. Okay, possible moves. And then we've got the reformat. Possible moves. Okay, possible moves are showing now. And reformat. I think because of my screen recording, sometimes the macro clicks are slightly delayed. Okay, so the possible moves are showing now. Okay, now the board's reformatted. Possible moves are showing. And now the board's reformatted. So we're kind of switching between those two modes there. And save the file here, Control S. And hopefully this is working slightly smoother on your system when I'm running the screen recording and the microphone and the camera. It does slow the macro processing down, but let's try the black bishop. Okay, we've got the possible squares here. Good. And then hit the black bishop again. And we can see the possible squares are, and there we go. It takes a little bit of time to exit the routine there. Try the black bishop here, squares are showing. Okay, you can see we can't see the highlighting on the last square because we select that square. We select that cell, yeah? So we want to avoid that. We can do that easily by just saying range A1.select. That's going to select the top left cell in the spreadsheet. And it's going to avoid that annoying elimination. It means that we can't see the formatting properly on that possible move square. Let's try this one more time. Bishop. Okay, yeah, that's switched off the possible moves and switched on again. You can see A1 is selected here. Okay, and you can see all the possible moves. Okay, let's try this bishop. Okay, but this is going to switch off the possible moves. And then clicking again, switching on the possible moves. That looks good. Switch off the possible moves. Let's just do the white kingside bishop one more time. And the possible moves are on. Click again, and the possible moves are off there. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So happy with the progress we've made there. So what's coming next? We've only processed the diagonal moves there for the bishop. So what I anticipate us doing next is using these columns here, putting the different piece movements in. So diagonal movement is one thing, straight line movement is one thing, pawn moving one square forward is one thing, the king moving one square in any direction is another thing. We're going to translate these into piece movements, and then for each piece, we'll say which movements are possible. Okay, which movements are possible. Now, the diagonal movement that we've programmed here. Where's it gone? Yep. Yeah, the diagonal movement, this is one possible movement. So anticipate with this routine, we'll have 8 or 9 possible movements. Now for each piece, we can say if each possible movement is possible to this piece, like a pawn can only move 1 square or 2 squares or take diagonally. So we can say if that particular movement is possible and just using a yes or no in this table. If the movement is possible, then the code is going to be processed. If the movement is not possible, the code is not going to be processed. So that's where I think we're going next with the Skunkworks. Okay. Well, thank you so much for watching. Shall we see if we can get Luna here again? Luna! Luna, come here! Luna, come here, darling. Okay, Luna's coming here. Come on, up, 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 up. Good girl. Look over here, Luna. Look over here. Okay, here's Luna. She's been with us about 2 weeks now. She's rehomed with us actually. She's 2 years old. She's a flat coat retriever. Absolutely beautiful, as you can see. She's been with us, been living together for about a week now, and she's just, yeah, totally gorgeous. And we've been taking her out for walks and stuff. And she cries a little bit at night because she's living on her own now as a dog. And she used to have 3 or 4 doggy mates to live with, didn't you? So she whinges a bit at night, but she's getting better. You're getting much braver, aren't you, darling? Okay, good. So thank you so much. If you watched to the end, I really appreciate it. You watching to the end. Please leave a comment, give it a like. And as I said at the beginning, let's try to popularize the Spreadsheet Skunkworks series. I'll be very happy to do more if they got a few more views and if they got a bit more engagement. You know, I'll be very happy to do more. This is my infinity project, and it could go on for 100 videos, 200 videos. But I can see now a route to actually creating that chess computer so we can actually make some moves. So I'm excited about it. I hope you are too, and I hope it's helpful for you. Okay, guys, that's it for this video. I'll see you soon.